The Choir Guys podcast wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsors. To see the full list and learn more about them, visit thechoirguyspod.weebly.com/r-sponsors. Now here's a word from this week's featured sponsors.
On guard!
Irresistible stories. Captivating characters.
Stories that draw us in and keep us coming back for more.
Tales told through music by the world's greatest composers.
Wait, you forgot this. Don't miss a single episode, because cowboys don't say goodbye.
The Springfield Symphony is binge-worthy. Join us for The Painter, February 14th at Hammons Hall.
When it comes to insurance, one size does not fit all. At Hames Insurance, they're an independent agency, so they work for you, not just one company. With multiple options for home, auto, life, and more, they'll find the best fit for your needs and budget. Visit hamesinsurance.com and let them help protect what matters most. Tired of making your own sight reading examples? Sight Reading Factory generates unlimited, tailored exercises in seconds. It's a total game changer for music educators. Try it at sightreadingfactory.com. Are you looking for high-quality choral music and a company that pays composers fairly? Endeavor gives creators 50% royalties, not 10%. Explore their repertoire at endeavormusicpublishing.com. Dale Duncan tried every sight singing method out there and saw what didn't work. So he built one that does. Designed for beginners, S-Cube trains the ear and the eye from day one, celebrates progress, and makes room for fun. If you want real results with zero gaps, check out the S-Cube sight singing program today. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Choir Guys podcast. My name is Blake Richter.
And I'm Danny Gutierrez.
We have a special episode today brought to you by the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, and our guest just may be involved with that organization.
Yes, our guest today is the music director and conductor of the Springfield Symphony and the Topeka Symphony Orchestra in Kansas. He has held both posts since 2013. Prior to coming to the Midwest, he was the conductor of both the North State Symphony in California and the Juneau Symphony in Alaska. This fall, he conducted the Hangzhou Philharmonic in China, one of the leading orchestras in Asia. Other major orchestras he has conducted include the Thailand Philharmonic Orchestra, the Hangzhou Symphony Orchestra in China, and the Guanajuato Symphony in Mexico.
He's a regular conductor for dance, having conducted the Martha Graham Dance Company with the Naples Philharmonic and many performances with the St. Louis Ballet, the Montana Ballet Company, and the Kansas Ballet. Hey, I can't pronounce ballet, so it's fine. A native of Los Gatos, California, he earned his undergraduate degree at Stanford University. He holds a master's degree in choral conducting from California State University, Chico, where he studied with William Ramsey, and he completed his doctoral studies in orchestral conducting at the Peabody Conservatory in Baltimore. He and his wife Alice live in Springfield. Their son Ned is a sophomore at the journalism school at Mizzou, which is like the elite journalism school in my opinion. And their son Grant is a sophomore at Central High School. Please welcome Kyle Pickett. Hey, how's it going?
Now everybody's turned off because, that's the bio is too long.
No, you've gone all over the world in places that obviously we're really good at pronouncing.
So how are you, man? I know we're I was about to say we're all chilling, but we're not chilling because it's beautiful weather outside. It's like 65 degrees.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's like we've missed winter here, which, honestly, on concert week, this is a concert week for us. On concert week, I'm always glad when there's no threat of winter weather because,
for sure.
Canceling rehearsals. And it just seems like, we tend to do all of our big choral orchestral collaborations in early February. And I can't tell you how many times we've had to cancel rehearsal. We got Verdi Requiem or Mahler 2, and we've got to cancel for snow. So I'm taking this weather. This is good.
Yeah, for sure. And what are you conducting this week?
This week, we're back from all of our holiday concerts and pops and all that kind of stuff in January, Nutcrackers, those sorts of things. So we're back with our first classical program of the season, and I'm super excited about it. It's just two pieces. We're doing Stravinsky's Petrushka, the ballet, in 1947 version, and then Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto on the second half. So it's a meaty program here.
Yes,
Nice. We like meat. Meat
Yeah.
is good.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a nice transition. I mean, Christmas is great and it's wonderful for a season, but it's relatively fluffier compared to the canon classical works. The Rachmaninoff 3. Who's the pianist coming in for that?
So we have, with the Springfield Symphony, we've got an international young artist competition that's open to people who are like, I think they have to be in university or grad school. And so a lot of these competitors are grad students, kind of pre-professional. And it's Wei-Yen Chan, and she's a piano doctoral student at Indiana University. She's originally from Taiwan. And so part of, doing the whole competition circuit, and she's just a monster. This is a monster piece, and she's a monster player. So it's going to be fun.
Awesome.
Wow.
I feel like you're doing way cooler stuff than us. Today we just had kids play with giant boxes in our classroom.
Yep, that's what we
Hey,
do.
We had 300, half-inch binders delivered, and we have giant boxes, and we have middle schoolers, and you make an incentive. They get inside the box. It's a great time.
And there's a pretty direct line between playing in boxes and then later playing in the orchestra. So,
Playing Bach.
Yeah.
Playing in boxes and playing Bach.
Right.
Yes.
Well, cool.
All right. So tell us, Kyle, about your musical journey. What has led you to this point in your life, in your career, and that's brought you all the way to Springfield? And how has this happened?
So I'm one of those people. A lot of us in music have parents who are in music. My mom was an elementary music specialist. Actually, she studied with Kodai when he was at UC Berkeley. So
Dang. Okay,
yeah.
that's
So
cool.
he was kind of her mentor in grad school, and so she taught Kodai method in the elementary schools. She was also a piano teacher, so she was my first teacher. I started on piano with her when I was pretty young, and then when to make a short story even longer, I grew up in California in the Bay Area. I grew up sort of in the shadow of Proposition 13, which capped property taxes, which ended up gutting money for education. And as we all know, when they cut money in education, the first thing they cut is football, and then they cut music. No, they never cut football.
In that order, yeah.
Yeah, no, they cut music. And so again, with a mom who was a music teacher, she banded together with other parents, and they got music funded. So we had instrumental education when it had been cut in a lot of schools. And so in fourth grade, we had to choose an instrument. I was already studying piano, but I took up the flute because my grandfather played flute, way back in the 30s or whenever he was in high school, and 20s, probably late 20s. And so we had one of his instruments around, and I could play it. And so I chose it. I didn't really think about the cool factor of the instrument when I chose it. So as I went on, junior high, high school, I had aptitude for it. I liked it. I enjoyed playing it. We didn't have orchestras in our high schools. Again, because of the budget cuts, we had bands because they're never going to cut bands because you got to have something to play for the football team.
Yep.
So I was in marching band, and we had a pretty serious marching band program, which was a lot of fun. But playing flute, I like to say the definition of futility is playing flute on a football field, right? I mean, because nobody can hear you. And if the wind blows the wrong way, you can't even make a sound. And you might be surprised to know that as like a 14, 15-year-old guy in high school, playing flute on the football field wasn't the cool thing to do.
I disagree. I think it's the coolest thing to do.
I think things have changed a little, since the, late 80s. But anyway, I became drum major of the band. And so that was kind of my first taste of conducting. And then when we had to play in symphony or youth symphony, we had to go out of the high schools. And so it was really hyper competitive as a wind player to get into any of the youth symphonies. So I was in youth symphony by my senior year of high school. And then when I went to college, I knew I wanted to continue to study music, but I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to do a music career. But I went to Stanford, and the flute teacher at Stanford was a woman named Frances Blaisdell, who was kind of an amazing, amazing woman. First woman to go to Juilliard School. They're not great records, but she was one of the first women in the New York Philharmonic, definitely the first wind player in the New York Philharmonic. They had a harpist earlier and maybe a string player, but she was one of the first. Her husband was principal clarinet under Toscanini. And so like between the two of them, they knew every musical figure of the 20th century. Like you'd walk into their house, it was just like a museum of photographs of everybody. I mean, from, Bartok, Rachmaninoff, Copland, Stokowski, Metropolis, all of the greats. I remember I was studying a piece by Edgar Varese with her. I was playing it. She kept saying, "That's a wrong note." I'd say, "I don't think so." And I'd play it again. She said, "That's a wrong note." And finally I said, "Frances, it's a right note. I'm playing the right note." And she went to her file cabinet, pulled out a piece, and it was Varese's hand-corrected copy where he had made changes on it.
Wow.
So that kind of connection, that direct connection, and she worked with Metropolis, they were connected by one generation to people like Brahms and Tchaikovsky,
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a pretty spectacular thing. And so I decided to go on, but I didn't want to necessarily be a flutist. I mean, conducting was kind of still in my blood. And as you all know, it's hard to get a lot of conducting experience as an undergrad. It's especially hard for orchestral conducting. I think there's sometimes more opportunities in choral music than there are in orchestral programs. And so, in fact, I didn't really like the orchestral conductor we had, but we had a choral director, William Ramsey, who was a spectacular conductor, just beautiful technique. He was very kind of traditional. He conducted with a very orchestral technique. He used a baton as a choral director. As it turned out, he was kind of a prodigy who studied with Robert Shaw. Oh, and so Robert Shaw was his main teacher. And so I went to Bill and I said, "Hey, can I study with you?" And he said, "Sure, but you've got to take the, beginning choral conducting class first." And when I did that, as you all know, in early choral conducting classes, you're singing together, for the other conductors. And he said, "Hey, why aren't you in the choir?" And I said, "Well, I'm an orchestral person. I play in the orchestra. I've never sung in a choir." He said, "You should join the choir." He said, "I'll put you in the chorale," which was the audition small group. And that was like my first choral experience. And this is my junior year of college. So it was kind of late. And, I remember we jumped in with, like, the first thing we were singing was the Bach motet, Comme Jesu Comme, double motet.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard.
That's like, quite the intro. Hard. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right.
I sang that in chorale my sophomore, junior year.
That's a great piece. Wow. I mean, wonderful piece. And so, it honestly just opened up this huge door of music that I'd never, experienced. And I was planning to go on and do a doctorate in choral conducting, but Bill said, he said, "I'm taking early retirement for Stanford. I'm going to go to Cal State Chico." And he said, "I'm not going to have any grad students, so I want you to come with me and be my graduate assistant and do a master's in choral conducting." So I went with him and I did that sort of on my way to my doctoral studies, which was in orchestral conducting. And so for that, I went to Peabody, studied with Frederick Prausnitz. Prausnitz, was an orchestral conductor through and through, but he was dean at New England Conservatory for a while at Juilliard when Robert Shaw was there. So there was another Robert Shaw connection. And in fact, one of the things that he did when he was dean that he said backfired pretty spectacularly was he felt that all of the orchestral players, everybody in the conservatory, should sing. And so they made this mandatory class where once a week they had the whole conservatory in, and they would sight sing through the big choral orchestral repertoire with Robert Shaw conducting them through it. And apparently the instrumentalists hated it so much they would sneak out, and so they'd lock the doors so people couldn't leave. I mean, here you are, you're getting to work with Robert Shaw, So they'd lock them in, and then they'd find ways to get into the orchestra pit and sneak out so that they would.
Gosh.
But anyway, so I did my doctorate with Maestro Prausnitz, and then after that, just started conducting. I thought for sure I'd go the university route, but there were professional orchestras open, and I got those jobs, and I was out in California and Alaska for a while, and then made my way out here.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you say all this too, and hearing your extensive vocal background, or at least where it started. So first off, your mom studied with Kodai. That's
Yeah.
pretty wild in and of itself.
I wonder what Kodai level she was. Just kidding. She was level 1000.
level master, like Jedi.
There probably weren't levels. That's why
I don't think they even had the levels then.
That's what I was
that is wild.
joking about.
But I remember I guess 3 years ago when we had an ensemble at Nixa participate in their Christmas spectacular.
Oh yeah.
And I was just watching the rehearsals, and I was kind of taken back. I'm like, oh, we're using all this vocal imagery. Like, you would say stuff like, you would be like, now this needs to be more here, and put that in the sound, and then think that, and then you would model with like a beautiful tone. And I'm like, I didn't understand it. And I think I came up to you and I talked to you about it a bit. And I think then you revealed that you're your master's in choral conducting. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So so what you learned in your master's degree, I know you've had a doctorate since, but do you feel like you used some of these choral elements in just your everyday working with orchestras?
Oh, for sure. I mean, what I lack, honestly, because I did my master's pretty fast, if I'd really intended to go on in choral music, I needed to do a lot more with diction and language and that kind of thing, for sure. But I learned a lot about technique and vocal technique. I didn't mention this, but I started studying voice seriously back then too, as an undergrad, and then continued through the master's. And then when I went to Peabody, I actually auditioned and got accepted in one of the voice studios to do a minor in voice with Wayne Connor, who is a famous tenor teacher, and so I learned a lot about vocal technique, and honestly, there's a lot about vocal technique that's very, very similar to flute, because both voice and flute have the most free flowing air of any wind instrument. All of the other wind instruments have some element of back pressure. If it's a clarinet, there's pressure in your mouth. Certainly, if there's a trumpet, horn, even tuba, there's more back pressure. But with flute, when you play, you're just exhaling. So just like you are with singing. And so all of the support mechanisms that you use, that you learn how to breathe and support the sound, are almost the same. And in fact, some of the big breathing gurus both do it for flute and for voice.
Interesting.
And so that was all there. And as I said, Bill had a fairly traditional conducting style. So he was working with with a baton, and he used to say, we don't. He didn't like the little magic fingers of little circles. He wanted to see traditional style conducting. So that fit pretty well with where I was going. But I think I'm sure you two know this, but every conductor has things that they care about a lot, right? I mean, we're all working from the same music, but every performance sounds different. That's because we all care about different things. And one of the things that I think comes from the choral work for me is that I care a lot about the horizontal line with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And I will often say to the strings that their real handicap, what they lack, is the necessity to breathe. I mean, we got to breathe to live, but I mean, they don't have to breathe to produce their sound. And so that sense of how the line fits under the breath, or how the breath fits under the line is probably a better way to say it, is something that string players aren't thinking about the way wind players and singers have to think about that. Because we've got to manage our breath in a different way than they do. Now they have bowing, so they have to manage the up and down, and so, I will often say to the winds, you're at a disadvantage because you don't have a bow. But the strings don't have to do that breathing line. And so that sense of line and direction definitely came, I think, out of the choral work that I did, for sure.
So funny, talk about conducting choir with a baton. My first concert I ever conducted, I conducted with a baton, and it's because of you.
Because I conducted with a baton?
Because you used to conduct with a baton.
Yeah,
and I was
did.
like, well, if he's doing it.
Back in the day, I did. I don't anymore, unless it's like if I have to conduct an orchestra or something.
Yeah, I just felt more comfortable, and so like for a first concert, I was like,
easy
I
to
don't care.
make the ictus clear.
Yeah, and I was like, well, if Danny's doing it, I guess I can do it too.
Well, and when you got big forces, so when you've got, especially the choral orchestral repertoire, right? You've got a sea of people in between you and the choir.
Yeah.
And so, in that respect, the baton is just this great visual aid. Yeah. And it just helps in that way. I think for me, and this is not a criticism of choral conducting, but I think a baton requires a little more discipline, because in some ways it's easier with your hands to show things, to show shapes and so forth. And then if you're doing it with the baton, then you've really got to think about how the beats of the bars create that line, because you can stop, everything that I was just talking about the extended line and the horizontal line. You can stop that by beating up and down. If your physical technique is not in accord with what you're hoping to achieve, and the baton will often do that, because the baton is very easy to give vertical pulses that sort of stop the line. So in some ways, it requires that you think differently about the way the beat happens, because you have to have that discipline with the baton. That doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean it's better than the hands. It's a different way of communicating. And since what we're doing with our hands is nonverbal communication, I think, I've heard sometimes it's no different, beating with the baton or without a baton, it's no different. It is different, because it's a different mechanism for that nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was conducting 5th and 6th graders, so no matter what I did, I wasn't really communicating effectively, because they were looking at their parents out in the audience or looking up at the singer.
And you have the baton, you're trying to get them to sing higher, you're like,
up here, guys.
Oh, yeah, I have so much respect. I've talked about this a lot. In Topeka, the youth symphony is part of the symphony organization. In Springfield, it's a separate organization, but in Topeka, it's part of us. So, I'm responsible for the conductors of the youth symphony. And I say many times, that is just one of the hardest things that you will ever do, because you are conducting, but you're educating. That's more important than the conducting. Yeah. And the people who have that gift, the people who are working with young people all the time, the higher the level you go, you kind of think, oh, it gets harder and harder, but in some ways it's easier and easier. Yeah. Right? You have to be paying attention to such radically different stuff. The higher the pro level the orchestra, the fewer mistakes they make, the more they know that piece, then the less there is for you to do in terms of
the less they rely on you.
Yeah.
Honestly.
The less that there is to do to correct things. And that was one of the things that my teacher at Peabody, Maestro Prausnitz, used to say to us all the time, because we'd get up there. We had a conductor's orchestra. Part of the reason I chose Peabody is because at the time they were the only conservatory that had a dedicated conductor's orchestra that we worked with 2 to 3 times a week. So 2 to 3 times a week, we had a full orchestra, and that we conducting students would stand up and work, and our teacher, he would sit right behind us and berate us in front of the orchestra. But no, he would work with us while we were working with the orchestra. And especially when you were first starting, we'd get up there and we'd be doing, Beethoven or Brahms or something, and you'd stop and say, no, horns, your entrance was wrong, or no, strings, that's A sharp, not an A flat kind of thing. And then he would stop us and he would say, what do you do? Imagine for a moment, pretend you're standing in front of the Philadelphia Orchestra. They're not going to make any mistakes. They're not going to play any wrong notes. They're not going to come in any time in a wrong place. Now, what are you going to do? Now, what do you say? And that was his biggest challenge to us, is that you have to have the concept and the idea of the piece so that if you get in front of an orchestra or an ensemble that never makes a mistake, you still have something that you're doing that's shaping that music. And so I tried to take that into whatever I'm doing, whether it's fifth graders or college kids or a professional orchestra, that same philosophy in. But it's way harder, with little kids because, or even high school kids, because you're developing a discipline. You're training on how to do these things. You're not just doing the music.
Yeah, no, for sure. Encore Tours proudly supports the choir guys and the choral community that surrounds us. They work with all types of choirs to create custom international tours with guaranteed audiences, seamless logistics, and unforgettable performance experiences. Want to take your ensemble abroad? Bring your vision to life at encoretours.com/choir-guys. If you're a choir director tired of clunky fundraisers and unreliable companies, let us point you to one that works. Kansas-made frozen pastries. We've used them for over 5 years and have had an incredible experience every single time. In fact, last fall our choir sold over $35,000 worth of pastries, and honestly, it didn't even feel like that much work. The product is high quality, the company is great to work with, and students are excited to sell. It all arrives in a timely manner, and your program gets the funds it needs without the usual stress. Check them out today at kansasmade.com. What if your school's social media wasn't all on you? That's what Class Intercom offers, student-led, teacher-approved content creation that actually works. We've been using it for 3 years and the difference is huge. Students write the posts, we review and approve them. Class Intercom gives them a platform and gives us peace of mind. It also syncs with every school account, so no more logging into 5 platforms just to post one update. If you're ready for better content and less stress, check out classintercom.com today.
So can you tell us a little bit about the concert on February 14th and why people in the community should attend?
Yeah. If it's okay with you, I'll step back for a moment. So when I put together the seasons for the symphony, for a regional professional orchestra like the Springfield Symphony, where we are really an orchestra for our city and our local region. I mean, if you're the Chicago Symphony and New York Philharmonic, you're the orchestra for a giant metropolitan area, and also people come from everywhere to go because run all around the world. But we really exist for our community. And back when I was in California, back when the Great Recession happened, I just remember having this thought: we are just not going to survive unless we can make the case to our community that we are relevant to their lives in some way. And it's not good enough. Sometimes musicians can be the worst advocates for music. Ask an orchestral player why Beethoven's important. What do you mean, why is he important? He's Beethoven, But that's not an answer to the question, right? For someone in the community. You have to go a lot farther. He's dealing with themes about love and loss. Have you ever had love and loss in your life? Yeah, of course you have. Verdi, Requiem is dealing with themes of what happens when we die. Have you ever worried about what happens when you die? Yeah, of course we have, because we're humans. I mean, it's that connection to humanity that is the reason why we do these pieces. 200 years old, whatever, 150 years old. So what I've done as a philosophy is I've programmed around thematic ideas that connect to people in some way in their lives. So, a couple of years ago when we were coming out of COVID, I did this season called FOMO, or the fear of missing out.
That was fun.
Yeah, and on my TV commercials, I blew up a couch. I had a TNT because I said the enemy is the couch, right? You're stuck on your couch. Blow up your couch. Get out there. And it was directly related to this idea that we've all kind of hunkered down, and now we've got to get back out and we've got to get doing things and seeing things, right? I mean, everybody knows what that means.
Wait, did you actually blow up a couch though?
I actually blew up a couch. We
like
hired
with a traditional vroom, that thing?
Yeah, so it was not CGI. We hired a pyrotechnics guy out of Branson.
Nice.
We got a couple old couches from Drury University.
Wow.
We found a field that we could do this in. We went out like just after dawn, and he rigged up the couch with all these explosives. So we called
Whose idea was this? I want to know whose idea was this. This is your idea?
This is my idea.
Okay, he could be a middle school instructor after all, I think.
The common domestic couch, comforting and familiar, but we fear it's been holding you back. You've been cooped up in the house for far too long. It's time to say goodbye to the ordinary and say hello to what you've been missing out on. Live music in a concert hall with friends and neighbors. NOMO FOMO, the fear of missing out. Don't miss opening night, September 16th at Hammond's Hall. We'll see you at the Symphony.
I think you're in the wrong profession.
This is great.
Kyle.
No, I love this, man.
I stole a little bit of that idea. So I was talking to Nick Nelson, who runs the art museum in Springfield. And he said, we were talking, and he said something about people were asking him about competition amongst various arts groups. And he said, no, there's no competition amongst arts groups. Our competition is the couch. So I took that in my head. And then I thought, okay, so if our competition is the couch, how do we defeat it? And I said, well, I'm going to blow one up. And so
that seems,
we
logical.
called the pyrotechnics guy down in Branson. And I said, I know this is a strange question, but
can you blow up a couch?
Would you be willing to blow up a couch? He's like, yes. I mean, that apparently was what he was waiting for, someone to call and say, can you blow stuff up? So, no, he came and he rigged that couch with all these explosives. I had a hard hat on. I was wearing my tails. I'm out in this field. And, I pushed the thing and kaboom. And I mean, you can see me go, because it was.
Is this the really first thing you've blown up? Like physically?
It's the first thing I've blown up officially. So.
Officially? Wow. Officially. Unofficially.
I don't know if we want to know about
that's
the
only thing
unofficial.
I'm going to admit to. No, yeah, it was pretty fun. And the funny thing is we had two couches there and we had one that we were going to practice on. And so we shot it and the practice explosion was so good. It just obliterated that couch. Like one of the couch cushions flew like 50 yards.
Oh my gosh.
And anyway, it caught a lot of attention, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we ran that on TV, and my philosophy on this is that you're flipping through the channels, you see a guy in a tux and it says symphony, and the couch explodes. Like, what is going on? I mean, the last thing I want is a TV commercial where it's like, come see the Springfield Symphony play the music of Brahms. You're not giving anybody a reason to go that way. Okay, so that was a very long way to getting to this year. And this season is a season that we call binge-worthy. And every single concert has a story with characters in it. So, like we did Billy the Kid. That was one of the concerts. This week we're doing Petrushka, which is, of course, a ballet score with people. We're going to do Beethoven's Eroica Symphony later in the season, which is really written about Napoleon. So we're going to play on that. And so every year we do a collaboration with the local university choirs. Missouri State, Drury, and Evangel join us for that concert. And I was kind of thinking about, okay, how does that fit into this theme? And so I actually, one of the things that's important when you do thematic programming is not to be dogmatic. You don't have to shoehorn everything in. And so one of the things that I've talked to the choral directors, Cameron Labar, I've talked to Tom Matrone over the years is we've not done the Fauré Requiem. I don't think we've ever done the Fauré with the Springfield Symphony. And so that had been on the list for a while. And I thought, well, let's explore that idea. Let's see if we can do that. And but then how does that fit into my theme? And of course, you all know the foray is not like doing a fire and brimstone requiem. It's not like the Verdi requiem. It's not like the Mozart requiem. It's more of a mysticism requiem. I mean, religious mysticism.
Yeah.
And so that reminded me of the Hindemith Symphony, Matisse der Maler, which is about the painter Matthias Grunewald and his painting of the Isenheim altarpiece, this very famous altarpiece in medieval Germany. And Hindemith had written an opera about it. Then he extracted the symphony. It's a great piece. It's one I actually played when I was a senior in high school in youth symphony. It's a terrific piece. And so it fit thematically with the foray. It also fit musically because the foray, is gentle most of the way through, and the symphony has big explosive sections and it ends with a much bigger kind of fanfare ending. And then I added to that one more piece, which is a transcription for strings of a choral work by Hildegard von Bingen, one of the earliest recorded, certainly the earliest woman whose music was recorded, and one of the earliest that we have recorded, not recorded sound recordings, but written out. And so this concert is called Matthew the Painter, but it's really about religious mysticism. So that's what that's how I arrived at the foray. And so I'm really excited to explore that because, a lot of times we do big bombastic, a lot of the choral orchestral pieces are big and bombastic. And that's great. I love that. I mean, it's especially good because those are big audience pleasing pieces. One of the things about the foray requiem that Bill Ramsey, my choral teacher, used to say, he said, it's really maybe better service music than it is concert music. And I don't think that's totally true. I mean, it requires the preparation for a concert. But I think what he meant is it's not a get people out of their seat at the end kind of piece. It's much more contemplative. So I'm excited to do that. Yeah, we did something a little bit. I like to experiment with different forms of concerts, and so a couple years ago we did the planets, and so I needed the women's choir for the end of the planets for Neptune. For Neptune. And so, but that wasn't enough to get the whole choral collaboration going. And so that year we did Benjamin Britten's Rejoice in the Lamb on the first part of the concert. And so we did that. I just conducted the choir, no orchestra in that. That is organ and choir. Mm-hmm. And then we ran straight from that into Vaughan Williams' Toward the Unknown Region. And so it was kind of this again, sort of religious mysticism that related to the Vaughan Williams, which is about sort of seeking far off. And then on the second half of the program, we had the planets that end up as far away in our solar system as you can. Mm-hmm. With the women's choir up in the rafters at Hammond's Hall. So, I'm always willing to find unusual ways to perform works with choir and the orchestra together.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love the collaborations and also the creativity and with programming. Blake's really good about this, about whenever there's a junior high concert, even today, you were talking about the upcoming program, and even though it's not until May, just kind of instilling the message behind it. When I thought that was really effective. What is the message again?
It's begin again. So kind of like new beginnings, or with middle school students, sometimes they have really toxic relationships that maybe they need to either end and then begin again with their life without that relationship, or some of these students experience loss, and like, how do you begin again?
Well, and they're about to go off to high school where they begin again.
That's what I talk to our 8th graders about is like, hey, this is your last concert at the junior high, and some of you, maybe you need a new beginning at the high school because, maybe you've made some choices here at the junior high that you want to leave behind. Or maybe you want a new friend group because you don't like the friend group that you've put yourself in. that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're doing for this semester, which is fun.
That is so cool, and that's exactly what my philosophy is in terms of program for the big symphony, because you're giving them a reason why that music relates to their life today.
Yeah,
and that's the only reason that we survive as an art form. I mean, it's not enough to just be pretty, and it's not enough to just be old. And it's not enough to just be like, well, we've always done these pieces, so we're going to keep doing these pieces. They have to relate somehow.
Yeah, they need to be relevant for sure.
Yeah, have to. They have to. So that's great. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's always my fear. Like, so I'm a big fan of opera. I love opera. And I'm always fearful, like, over time, who's going to take the torch and move it forward? There needs to be more generations of people who can really appreciate the art form. And it's funny. A friend sent me this video yesterday of what opera were they doing? They were doing Mozart, the Seraglio. You know what I'm talking about, that opera. And they did it in the Abduction, I guess. And they did it with this. It was all done with Star Trek, like that. It was done. Yeah. Have you seen this before? They did it with Star Trek characters, and I'm like, what a cool. This is like fusing together two passions of mine, Star Trek and opera, combined into one. It's so cool and so relevant, but I think that fresh thinking is necessary to move things forward.
Yeah. And I think opera, I like doing opera too. I actually conduct a fair bit of opera, and I love opera. Mm-hmm. I think in some ways opera has an easier sell because it's about something so viscerally immediately. You can sell Marriage of Figaro or Carmen, or it's a little bit more of a direct understanding of how this relates to me, versus say Brahms' Fourth Symphony. I mean, how does that communicate?
Yeah, great point.
And so that's the other side of what we do, is that we have to, I do this thematic programming, but I also talk about the pieces a lot, so that I'm out there, kind of explaining and advocating and trying to generate the enthusiasm and excitement based on an idea. And that idea is not going to be, oh, Brahms did a really interesting use of the Neapolitan sixth chord, or hey, he shifts to the minor sixth or minor third on his, I mean, that's not going to fly.
Hey, it would excite me. So.
Yeah, well, there are a few people that it will excite, and they are already there.
Yeah.
So, they're already there. But that's kind of what leads to the February program here for us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
As choir directors, we all want our singers to become better readers, but finding the time and the tools to teach sight reading effectively can be tough. That's where Sight Reading Factory comes in. With customizable exercises, auto-graded assignments, and new auto-assessment features, Sight Reading Factory turns sight reading into a powerful, streamlined part of your curriculum. You can focus on the exact skills your singers need, whether it's reading in mixed meter, isolating tricky intervals, or reinforcing solfege. Students can practice anywhere, anytime, and you can track their growth along the way. We've used it, we love it, and we can't recommend it enough. Visit sightreadingfactory.com to see how it can transform your choir program today. At Endeavor Music Publishing, the composers come first, and it shows. Composers receive 50% of every sale, a level of support rarely seen in music publishing today. Their catalog features high-quality, community-minded works. When you program from Endeavor, you're supporting a fair model and programming music that inspires. Explore their catalog at endeavormusicpublishing.com. If you're a choir director looking for a game-changing sight singing method, meet S-Cubed. One teacher said, "This curriculum surpassed my expectations. There's no gaps, no fluff, just clear, detailed, and engaging lessons. All I had to do was download it and go." S-Cubed gives you slides, morning work, quizzes, games, and tips for every single day, plus video guidance from Dale Duncan himself. You get your time back, your students get excited, and you get a curriculum that actually works. Start sight singing with confidence and download S-Cubed today. So Kyle, you've been successful at growing audience engagement through creative marketing and outreach, like we talked about with the explosive couch. Also, I told my mom today she was taking care of our 16-month-old daughter. I told her that you were going to be on the show today, and she was like, "Oh, I see him on TV all the time." And I don't have local channels or anything. I just have streaming and stuff, so I never get to see all that. But my mom was like, "Yeah, Kyle Pickett, I know who that is." But what are some strategies you implement on a regular basis that our listeners could steal for their own programs? Let's say ones that don't have the budget to pay for an exploding couch or something like that.
So the other thing that's really, really important, and I don't want to minimize this in talking about the thematic stuff, your product has to be excellent.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the first. I mean, if you're putting out something that's mediocre or substandard, doesn't matter what you do, right? I mean, so for me, the concert is the key always. And so we're always trying to improve as an orchestra. I mean, there's not a concert that's gone by where I don't want us to be better than we were last concert.
Yeah.
Or if we aren't better, then I'm frustrated and want to figure out why and make it better the next one, right? So you're constantly reaching for higher level of performance, always. But, I think on the strategy, I think a big part of it is it doesn't really take money at all or an advertising budget to talk about what we do. Yeah. And we have to talk about it in ways that that reach the people who are not our normal audience. And so I will go and I'll talk to our own Symphony Guild, right? That's our auxiliary organization of supporters. They're, donors and supporters. And I'll talk to them about the season. And, we did one that a couple of years ago called Swipe Right. And that whole season was about love, right? And so I would go to our guild, and let's be honest, the average age of the guild is kind of, my mom's or grandma's age, right? And I said, our season's called Swipe Right. And they look at me like, what?
And one guy's like, I know.
Yeah. No, and they're like, I don't know what he's talking about. And I'll say, honestly, don't worry about it. That's not for you. You're our diehard fans. You're going to come whether I play Debussy or Copland or Shostakovich or Brahms or Beethoven. They're going to be there because they're our diehard fans.
Yeah.
But for the people who are not, I'm constantly thinking about, okay, who's our audience and who am I trying to reach? Who am I trying to capture? And of course, I think anybody is capable of enjoying what we do. But there is a group of people, that's not their thing. They're not going to go. That's okay. We can accept that. And if you beat your head against the wall trying to get them to go, you're not doing your job. There's the people who are always going to go. And again, if you chase them, you're not doing your job because they're going to be there anyway. But there's this group in the middle who might go, if it's interesting enough, if it catches their interest, if something comes up that piques some curiosity, if they're already the kind of person who likes to go and see things. And so I want to catch that person. Now, I think part of the problem that orchestras have gotten into over the years is they feel like we've got to make that person a season ticket holder. And I think that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
I want to catch that person's attention. And if they say, hey, John Williams, that sounds pretty fun, I'll go see that John Williams concert. It doesn't mean they're necessarily going to show up when I do Shostakovich Fifth or Beethoven's Third. They might, but they might not. And we have to be okay with that. But we still have to be trying to catch people's attention every time. And so after we're done recording this, I'm going off and I'm giving a talk to a civic organization this evening. And one of the things I'll do is I will talk about the pieces we do, but it'll be more about kind of what that experience is to go and sit in an audience. I got invited to do a TED Talk some years ago, and I did that TED Talk kind of about the fact that getting people together to see a performance is an act of community. It's not really necessarily an act of performance. I mean, of course, it is an act of performance because we're there performing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be gathering. But the truth is that you've got little kids, Blake. You've got elementary school, junior high kids. I've got high school kids. Our demographic, it's a real challenge to go see something because our kids are doing things all the time. They're busy. We've got to transport them to their lessons, to their sports things, to school activities, all those things. If you want to go to a concert, you got a 16-month-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, you got to get a babysitter. I remember having this conversation with one of my board members, and I said, for us to go to a concert, we've got to get a babysitter, and it's half impossible to find a babysitter, and then tack, $80 on the event. And my board member said, $80 when I was young, I babysat for a quarter. And I said, but that's not the world we live in anymore, right? And so you've got to buy your tickets, which are expensive, and you've got to make a date out of it. You go to dinner, then you got to go park, and then maybe it's icy and cold. You don't want to drive at night. If you're at the other end of our age spectrum, if you've never been to the symphony before, you go to this hall, you don't know where you go to get to your seat. Where am I going to go to the bathroom? What should I wear to this thing? When do I clap? I hear if I clap in the wrong place, everybody glares at me. Everything I just named is basically an obstacle to someone coming to my concert or your concert, right? All of those things are obstacles. And so for someone to decide to come and be in the audience, they have to get past all of those different obstacles, and we have to help them get past those obstacles. Yep. We have to give them the reason why they want to be there. We have to give them the education that they need so that they don't feel uncomfortable, like, did I wear the wrong thing or did I clap at the wrong time? I do a pre-concert talk before every concert so that people can learn about the music and the composers and some of the things that they're going to listen for. None of these things cost any organizations any money to do. This is all stuff that you could do on your social media, that you can do on your websites, that you could do on your emails that go out. We need to reduce obstacles for people to come and see us do what we want to do. And then the other side of the other side of that active community is that we've got to sort of make the case for why that's important at all. And one of the things I say is, we do pieces like Mahler's Second Symphony. Not every concert's going to be a Mahler 2, right? But sometimes you do a Mahler 2. And that is an overwhelming experience when you're in the audience. You just come away just floored by what you just heard, which is great. But what's even more important is that you're sitting next to your neighbors and the other people who live in the community who also shared that experience at the same time. And that's what makes it different than listening at home. You've got your good stereo, great. You've got your recordings of Bernard Haitink conducting Mahler 2 with Concertgebouw. Yes, it's going to be better than what we can do in Springfield just because that's the greatest orchestra in the world and the greatest hall in the world, But that's still not as important as being with your community members, with your neighbors and friends. I remember one time I was at Costco. This was in California. We had played the Berg violin concerto. I was definitely pushing our audience. That's a little bit far out there. It's a 12-tone concerto. And this guy came up to me in Costco. I didn't know him. It wasn't like I knew him, but he said, I was at the concert. I said, oh, great. He said, I could not sleep all that night after that piece. I said, that's great. He said, well, I didn't really like it. I said, that's okay. But he said, it just was like in me and I couldn't sleep all night. It was just like in me. And I said, that's the power of what we do, right?
Success.
Yeah, I mean, it's success. Now, no, I said, don't worry, I'm not playing the Berg next month. Come back, you're going to hear something totally different. It's not going to give you that same response, that same reaction. But if that came on the radio, he would just turn it off, right? Or you just kind of check out. But you're there, you're committed to it. We've all agreed to be in some place together. And the other thing is, nowadays, it's the only time a group of people puts down their phone for an hour.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, get 1,500 people, 2,000 people to just all put down their phone and focus on the same thing. I mean, where else does that happen? Almost nowhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are the things. I mean, I really think it's about communication. We have to, as artists, as musicians, we have to communicate about what it is we're doing, why those pieces relate to people and their lives today, and then how you can get past the obstacles to coming and seeing it done live. And that's all education, that's all education, but you can't do it in a way that sounds like they're being lectured to,
You got to blow up a couch.
You got to blow up a couch, right? Yeah. I mean, if I said, you should come hear Beethoven because it's good for you to hear Beethoven, no one's going to do that.
My doctor actually said it's good for me to stay at home and
Yeah, right. Yeah. But if you blow up a couch and you tell them, hey, you're going to miss out.
Then you're going to go against your doctor's orders and get there.
That's right. This is the season of fear of missing out. You don't want to miss out on anything. So.
Yeah. I love it. I'm big on promoting stuff, and I'm big on, I feel like communicating a message and communicating a theme and trying to get things out there. I love communication. It's like one of my favorite things. So.
And I think it relates to all levels of performance. I mean, like you're doing with your season about changes and transformation, or your concert about season and transformation, new beginnings with middle school kids. It's not just the kids, it's the parents, the grandparents who are coming to see that concert who also can be moved and transformed by that theme that is being expressed in the music that you're doing. So I think it's all levels. It goes all the way up and down our art form.
No, for sure. Cool. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for doing this, and we appreciate you being on our show, and we appreciate you. We've never had an orchestra conductor on here before, but at the same time,
exclusively an orchestra.
Exclusively.
Conductor.
But we also, love that we got to hear a little bit more about the February 14th concert. So for all of our listeners that are local, or any of our listeners that don't mind a drive to Springfield, what time is the performance on February 14th at 180K Hammonds Hall?
7:30 at Hammonds Hall with a 6:30 pre-concert talk. And what better thing to do for Valentine's Day than to go contemplate your immortal soul? That's a natural Valentine's concert.
It's completely
right?
fair.
Yeah. I love it.
Think about your mortality and your partner's mortality. So
Yeah.
I think about that often. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
actually, fortunately, Foray gives you a lot of comfort in that. So, it's not, there's no fire and brimstone here.
Yeah. I heard Missouri State do the work, or I got to record it live in Paris, actually. Well, not in Paris. It was in France. It was a couple years ago. They performed it with, I don't think it was a specific orchestra in France, but it was just a bunch of different, string players and wind players in France, and it was awesome to be able to hear the Foray there. So
I think I was a soloist in the Foray's Requiem.
Not in France.
No, not in France. I'm just trying to think. I don't think I'm thinking of anything else. It has a tenor solo in it, right?
There's a baritone solo.
It's a baritone solo. Yeah, baritone. There's a soprano solo and a baritone solo in that one.
Did I
Theron, your student teacher from last semester and previous student, he was the baritone soloist.
Okay. Oh, Theron was?
Theron LePage, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that wraps up this week's episode of the Choir Guys podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube to the Choir Guys channel so you can know when new episodes are coming out. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We could not be more thankful for our incredible sponsors. Please make sure to visit their websites and check them out in the description box below. If you're interested in partnering with the Choir Guys, please email us at thechoirguyspod@gmail.com.
You can follow the show on all social media at The Choir Guys Pod to catch bonus content throughout the week. Feel free to message us through these platforms if you want to hear us talk about something specific on the show. And please follow the Springfield Symphony Orchestra on all socials as well.
Thanks again to our guest, Kyle Pickett, for joining us on the podcast today. And make sure to check out their performance, The Painter, on February 14th.
February 14th.
Whatever that is.
Well, thank you again, Kyle. We will see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye. Have you ever stayed at a boutique hotel? You know, one of those places where everything is curated to be ultra special? Well, that's exactly the approach they take at Walton Music. Think of Walton as your boutique choral publisher. The Walton catalog features exceptional works from around the world, each carefully chosen for its musical excellence and supported with helpful tools for performers. With Walton Music, you're not just selecting music, you're choosing a curated quality experience with all of the details to help you and your choir succeed. Encore Tours proudly supports the Choir Guys community. See how they help choirs plan international performance tours at encoretours.com/choir-guys. Do you need a dependable fall fundraiser? Kansas Made has been incredible to work with, and their pastries always arrive in time for Thanksgiving. Start the conversation now at kansasmade.com. Are you tired of logging into 5 different social media platforms to make the same post? Class Intercom connects all your school's social media accounts in one place, and you can schedule out your post ahead of time. Simple, organized, powerful. Go to classintercom.com today.